Well, thank you all so much for joining us today.
And I hear we really have to like speak at the top of our lungs because the acoustics are not great. So let us know if you need us to speak a little louder.
Yeah, let us know. Great. So I'm very excited to talk to you because I know that you launched Zuckerberg Media about 1.5 years ago.
I did.
And there was a lot of buzz around the time about this new company that you were launching, and would love to get an update about kind of what you've learned so far and what you're working on now.
Thanks. So it was definitely an exciting time to launch a company. I actually had 2 startups simultaneously because I gave birth to my son about 2 months prior to launching Zuckerberg Media. So it was kind of very exciting to be right in the thick of that kind of having it all balance discussion. But I had a vision.
It was 2 months before.
Yeah, it was actually, I think, about 4 months before that I had my son. But it was, so I was just coming up for air and getting some sleep for the first time, and decided why not start a company, because I guess I hadn't slept for 4 months, and that's when you come to conclusions like that. But it was around that time I had done a lot of work with video at Facebook, with media partnerships. And I started, when I looked around at the landscape, I saw you have all these great companies, Netflix, Yahoo, YouTube, Hulu, starting to really invest more and more in original content. And very few studios, maker areas, places for content creators in Silicon Valley. And so I had a dream of launching kind of the next movie studio lot for internet video, and we set to work doing that. After about 1.5 years, we just opened our studio last month.
That's great. Why do you think that is, that so far there really have been so few studios and production houses and actual content coming out of Silicon Valley? Why has that stayed in Hollywood?
You know, I think the content creators aggregate around where the distribution platforms are. So traditionally you have, you know, television and movie and all the studios, and then you have all the production houses and companies that crop up around there. Now, the Bay Area, we do have some great content history. We have Pixar, we have Lucasfilm, so there is a history of some fantastic studios, but traditionally it's really only been in the last few years that we've seen a lot of dollars go towards buying original content in Silicon Valley. And so if I was a betting woman, which I guess I am because I have my own startup, I would say that you're going to start seeing a lot more content creation, studios, production companies cropping up in the Bay Area.
And what do you think it is about Silicon Valley that will make content differently than what we've seen before?
I think that getting data and insights is becoming more and more important ever to creating great content. With the web, people are they're viewing content in such different ways. Like we're seeing people are binge watching shows, attention spans are different. It's really different what gets people's attention. And so not only do you have to be great at creating content, but you really have to understand your audience right now. And I think it's really smart for content creators to want to be right near where those platforms are to reap the benefit of all the data and the insights that they'll get.
Can you talk a little bit about your time at Facebook? I know that's where kind of the seeds of this idea really began, and I'd love to get a sense from you about how that has helped to influence what you're doing today.
Sure. So very early on at Facebook, I started working with a lot of the mainstream media companies. At first, our thinking was around, you know, how do we change the public perception of Facebook from just a college site to more mainstream? So worked on a lot of partnerships around the 2008 election, around politics, around breaking news and global disasters. And it was kind of, I guess, right around 2010, I started thinking about what a television network built entirely on top of Facebook or social media might look like. And during one of our all-night hackathons, I decided to commandeer a broom closet with a little camera, interview some engineers on the live stream, and just see what would happen. And a few weeks later, Katy Perry's manager called asking if she could announce her global world tour on Facebook Live. So I then had to pretend it was actually a real show and not just a broom closet. But that just, it really spiraled. And a few months later, we actually wound up getting a call from the White House asking if President Obama could host a town hall to America on Facebook Live. And that was the moment that I really thought, you know, someone else is going to do this. And so, this is my passion, my dream. Why shouldn't it be me to give it a go?
That's interesting. Are there other companies that you've seen so far kind of test or try models like this?
Yes.
In terms of content creation?
Absolutely. I think Now This News is a really interesting company because they're not even really focusing on their own website. They're taking a total distributed model to the news, and they have this thought of, rather than bringing everyone to us, let's bring our breaking news content to everyone. I think that that's a really interesting model because it's getting harder and harder to get a consumer to like something or subscribe or come to your website, but if you bring it to them, it's a great way to get distribution in the new content world.
I'm also really curious too about this idea of how much data you can capture about what people are talking about on social media, what they're searching for, what sorts of websites they're visiting. How do you use that to create a show or a program that really captures viewers without it being too programmized, too kind of computer? That's
a great question. I mean, I think people are definitely still trying to figure that out, but there's a lot of interesting things going on with crowdsourcing right now in the content space. Like I know Hawaii 5-0 just crowdsourced the ending of their finale through Twitter. And so that's a great way that, they knew when they put that show on the air that people were going to watch it and tune in because they felt ownership, but also they knew it was going to be good. It was going to be what the audience wanted because people had told them that's what they wanted. We live in a really interesting world where you shouldn't ever have to put out a bad show anymore because you should be able to literally ask your audience exactly what they want to see and involve them in the process. So it's, I think we're going to start seeing more and more of that over the next few years.
One of the things that I wonder though is, even though you have all this data, you have all these models, last week was the upfronts here in New York, where TV networks premiered dozens and dozens of shows, very few of which will make it to the next season in the following year. And even though there's all of these new models to create content, to produce news, there's still these very old school ways of doing business.
Absolutely.
And at the same time, there's very few shows that have risen from Silicon Valley or risen from a digital media production to being a big time hit. Why is there that distance?
I think the ease of creating content right now is both the best and the most challenging thing for the marketplace. It's great that anyone could do a show. You and I could go, start our show later today. Maybe we should. But also the fact that anyone can start a show means there's so much noise. There's so much content. I think it's something like 100 hours of video are uploaded every second or every minute to YouTube. And so I actually think that contrary to kind of disrupting television, this is actually making television more important than ever because you still need kind of someone to give that curator stamp of approval to content. Like you still see that every time a YouTube show makes it to television, it's a big deal. There's a press release, it's huge. Television is still, the main cultural driver of influence in this country and the stamp of approval. So as long as that continues to be the case, the old model is still going to pervade in some ways.
Right. You're coming out of just having this show on Bravo that got tons and tons of attention. What did you learn from that about kind of your thinking and your growth in the social media world, but then also entering in this very traditional way?
I think that experience was kind of what led me to actually really see the value and the influence of TV, because living in Silicon Valley, you're surrounded by people that are like, we're gonna go disrupt Hollywood and like, we're gonna, smush the TV industry. And for me, what I saw is that it's really, really important to work closely with Hollywood, to work with the television industry, because they are such drivers of cultural influence in society, and their stamp of approval does matter so much that you can't really just walk into a room in Hollywood and say like, I make videos for the web, pay attention to me. But once I was able to walk into a room and say, I executive produced a television show, it was a very, very different conversation.
That's interesting. So people took you more seriously.
Absolutely. And I thought from where I was in Silicon Valley that all of the video work that I was doing in Facebook, it was like so groundbreaking and so exciting. But it's interesting when you go to Hollywood, they want to see television on your resume. They want to see that credibility.
That's interesting. So what's your business model? There's been tons of companies, tons of startups that have really tried to do something similar to what you're doing before. How do you think you'll make money?
Obviously we're still trying to figure that out, but I think, we're not just a platform and we're not just creating content. We have our studio, we have a lot of the content that we're doing, but I think we're really trying to bring a lot of the knowledge that we have in social media, in marketing, to helping brands, to helping companies with the entire experience, from the audience insight to the content creation to the marketing of that content, and really trying to bridge the gap there in a big way. So we'll see. We'll check back in another year.
You have some examples about the bride's example,
yes.
Right? Would you share that with us?
Sure, thanks. So we actually just worked on a really exciting project with Condé Nast. It was the first live, entirely crowdsourced wedding. So every aspect of the wedding, from the couples submitting videos to the hair to the gown.
But not the people getting married.
No, that's right.
Okay.
You didn't like crowdsource the bride and the groom.
Okay.
But couples did submit videos saying why they should be chosen. So every aspect of the wedding crowdsourced. I think about 500,000 people voted on different aspects of the wedding, and then we live streamed the entire wedding. So it was really exciting because you probably normally couldn't get 500,000 people to tune into a random wedding, but because we involved people throughout the whole process, it became kind of an experience or a social production.
That's fascinating. I am very interested in how you built an entire studio in Silicon Valley. Why did you do that? Why make that sort of investment?
First, it really stemmed from trying to find studio space when I was doing all this video work at Facebook, and just there not really being many options for startups and for tech companies. The first thing is that it was really hard to find a studio with live streaming capabilities. A lot of the studios had been around for decades and either didn't have the high-speed bandwidth necessary for live stream, or they were these tiny, tiny studios that only did live, where you sit in a chair and you go live to like CNN. So in my vision, I wanted a big, beautiful studio where you could also go live. And also, I saw a real lack of affordable options. There's so many startups, there's people, the need to have like a good Kickstarter video to get funding for a project, that's I think the single most crucial thing to if a project gets funded on Kickstarter or not, is the quality of the video. And so people can't afford a $30,000 a day studio for a startup or an investor deck or a Kickstarter. So I think putting a studio like that with live and affordable options in Silicon Valley, I felt was something the community really needed.
And do you envision making shows for the web, for mobile, for TV? How do you think that the actual content will be watched and distributed in the next couple of years?
The answer is yes, everywhere. I think, our target audience that we're really starting to zero in on is kind of people who are interested in tech, but in a pop culture consumer way. I don't think you're going to see us making like very geeky, techie shows. I think everything is going to be kind of around the intersection of tech and pop culture. But people are watching content in so many different ways. They're watching on their tablet, on their phones. They're listening to audio on the treadmill. A lot of people are still watching 14+ hours of TV a week. So my goal is to create a mass media property that's reaching people everywhere.
So you also recently submitted a draft of your book that's going to be out
in
November. What is it about? What's your idea in this?
The book is called Complicated, and what I found over the past year while we were doing construction on the studio, it was literally a hard hat construction zone that we couldn't go into for a year. So I did a lot of public speaking and traveling and speaking to a lot of people. And one of the things that always fascinated me was no matter what I got up and spoke about, even if it was business or Facebook or social networking, people always wanted to come up to me after and ask questions about their personal lives and tech. Like, how much screen time should their children get? Or how complicated it is to raise kids in this tech world? Or why is their husband using their iPad in bed and how can they get him to stop? And so I just realized tech makes our lives amazing in so many ways, which is why we're all here and we're all working in the tech industry, but it also makes things a lot more complicated. Modern living is, more fascinating but more complicated. And I also realized from talking to people that we're kind of closer to more people than ever before, but farther from the people sitting right next to us. And so that's what I'm addressing in my book, is kind of modern life in a tech-savvy era, and how all of these great tools around us have changed the way we love, raise our children, find friends or don't find friends, and everything.
It's really interesting. And you've launched this .complicated email newsletter list recently too, where you address a lot of these issues.
So I realized as I was writing the book, because traditional book publishing is a 1+ year process, I found that I wasn't really mentioning specific apps and sites in the book, because I was worried that by the time it hits shelves, it'll be completely outdated.
Yeah.
And so I decided to also start a companion website along with it. So that's where we're really discussing really timely things, new apps related to parenting or finding career or love, and that's where we can kind of get more in the weeds, because I don't really have lists of apps in the book and things like that. It probably wouldn't be relevant come December anyway.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was interesting when we were speaking before, you mentioned this idea that kind of Sheryl Sandberg and a lot of women recently have been talking about work-life balance and how you can become a very successful executive as a woman and balance home and life. You're talking a lot about tech-life balance. How do you think those two worlds collide?
It's interesting because you do hear a lot of people talk about work-life balance, and that was totally the case when I had my first job and I had a big old desktop computer and you literally shut it down at the end of the day and you go home and live your life. But now there's so many nights that my husband and I come home from work and we're like, we're gonna spend the night together, and night together means we're both on our laptops and don't speak one word to each other, and we might as well be in 2 different countries. We're definitely not spending the evening together. And what I realized is, if you go home and you're buried in your phone, or you're buried in your computer, it's still the same. You might as well be at work, you might as well be somewhere else. The conversation really needs to pivot to be around tech-life balance rather than work-life balance, and remembering to be present in the moment of your life.
How do you do that, though? I find that very complicated. It's every time that you hear a message go off on your phone.
Because there's studies that show that you're actually addicted to the gratification you get when you receive an email or text. It actually releases dopamine in your brain, and that's why people text and drive. They literally cannot not answer a text when it comes in. So I think it's really about being conscious. I have tried something new in our household where we pick kind of a 4 to 6 hour block every Saturday, and we don't have any tech, no phones, no computers. It's all about just family time and living in the moment. And the first few times we tried that, it was like going through all the 7 stages of grief and denial and anger. But by the 3rd time doing it, I was like, this is amazing. There's color in the world. I'm observing things. It's awesome. So it is a little bit about personal discipline.
That's interesting. I'd love to open it up for Q&A. We have 5 minutes, so a couple of quick questions, if anybody's wondering anything. No?
We could also
dance. There's one right here in the front.
Hi.
Yeah, we could.
Let's get you a microphone.
Hi, Randy. My name is Alex, and I was wondering who's your favorite interview at Facebook?
Oh, that's a great one. The question was, who is my favorite interview that I did? I have to say it's a tie between Mike Tyson and Pee Wee Herman. Very random. So Mike Tyson, I was a little worried the whole time. I was like, am I going to say something wrong, and is this going to be my last interview I ever conduct? But he was so gracious and lovely, and he was he's an animal lover. He was talking about his pigeons and how he loves them and protects them.
We had a story in the FT magazine about this too.
Awesome. And then Pee Wee Herman, he was one where I almost didn't even do the interview with him because I was like, whatever, Pee Wee Herman. More people mobbed that interview than Obama. it was like crazy. People were just like crazy to get in to see Pee Wee Herman and mobbed the audience. So those, I think, that was like two of the definitely most interesting ones. But I talk about a lot of these fun interviews in my book too. So that was my shameless marketing plug.
Any other questions? There's some
right
here in the middle.
Sorry, the microphone's coming over.
I would ask what brands you think are doing a really good job right now of like content and video content, especially for the social channels.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I definitely think like it's really hard to top what Red Bull did with the space jumper. I thought that was like one of the most riveting things that got everyone not only to watch a video, but to tune in at the exact same moment. It's so hard to capture the world's attention at one time. I really love what Dove is doing with the Real Beauty campaign also. I think that it's great to get those conversations going. But I do, and I also think, especially when you talk about the upfronts, the digital upfronts, a lot of brands are starting to get more into working directly with the content creators so that it's not just a show and an ad. It kind of all makes sense together, like the new version of the soap opera. So I'm excited to see a lot of what comes out of that too.
Are you all working with any brands now in any series that you're producing or videos? Or
yeah, we have kind of 2 series in developments right now that I wish I could talk about, but I can't. But that are definitely going to have some cool brand elements.
And is the advertiser baked in from the beginning?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
So yes, I think that's really the new model of content creation now. Huh. And I think there was a question in the back too.
Thanks. So I was thinking about the point you made earlier about there's no reason that people should be making bad shows because there's this opportunity to crowdsource ideas and get feedback. And I think Amazon's doing it with their pilots and obviously a great opportunity for content creators. But how do you reconcile that with content creators' role as creators?
Yep. I think that's an excellent point, and I think, sometimes the audience knows what they want, and sometimes they don't know what they want. Sometimes they just want to be delighted by something new. So I think there's always a balance, of kind of allowing the audience to have their hand in a few elements of the creative process, but ultimately as the creator, you have to take some risks and some gambles and view it like a startup. The majority of shows are going to fail, but just keep plugging away at what you love. But even if you can involve the audience a little bit in feeling like they have a teeny piece of ownership, it's only going to help.
Great. Do we have any more questions? There's one right over here.
Hi, thanks for taking the question. You talk about the difficulty with all the noise out there of driving, new users, first-time users to your property. Do you have sort of a syndication strategy? And will you have a YouTube channel? Do you already live stream, Ustream, some of these other portals where people can have independent channels? Do you plan to syndicate to one or more of those? And if so, can you just talk about the overarching strategy? Thanks.
Yeah, so we're still kind of putting our strategy together right now because especially a lot of what I'm focused on right now is kind of this complicated brand and creating content for kind of the, call it the 25 to 54-year-old woman who wants to be a little more tech savvy and wants to understand how to raise her children in this digital world. So right now we're kind of evaluating all the platforms to reach this woman, whether it's radio, television, where is she online and how can we reach her there? I think ultimately once the book is released and once we build that up, we'll be taking a more mainstream strategy. But I definitely think that's right. A lot of what we're doing, I plan to syndicate out rather than kind of make people come to us for sure.
Great.
So.
I think we're out of time.
Well, thank you guys so much. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you.